Never take life for granted. Shit real. I got issues for what I've been through, but then again, if I give you my all, it's genuine. You ain't never lived a life if you never took a loss. If I die tonight, everything I ever own, you can take it all. Put my pain in this music until the song hurting. Ever gave your heart to the wrong person? If I love you, just keep it tall with me. And in return, you get rewards from me. 5-star dinners, shopping sprees and long trips. Booked a short stay with your bae in the A and gave a long...
This hot trapper turn smack rapper. Only smack rapper that you know is smack rapper.
This dude approached me today and he was like, hey, we want to do, we know Terrence Gangster Williams, who's a regular on my show. He's like, he's talked about us, this particular guy that we want you to interview. We want to bring him to your platform to interview him. So I said, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is hit up Terrence. So I said, hey, do you know so-and-so? He goes, yeah, he killed my homeboy, Sterling, one of the Hot Boys, right? Mm. I said, okay, would you have an issue with me interviewing him? He said, yeah, I would. I said, okay, then that's that. I'm having to pick a side. Right. This is someone who's a regular on my show, who I gave him his first interview. He went around and turned it into a whole YouTube platform for himself that he's supporting himself with. He's always been cool with me, always been professional, showing up on time, answered every question. We would hang out afterwards, have lunch, always be friendly with each other, everything else like that. I'm not going to scrap my relationship with this guy over this new person, regardless of how much money he could make.
And that's kind of, that is the side of it that doesn't get talked about. Like when people say, why won't you have certain people on the show? I don't want to tell you. You know what I'm saying?
It's that serious.
I don't really want to say it. Yeah. But hello.
Right. But here's on the flip side, right? Here's on the flip side. A couple months ago, I did an interview with Terrence, and one of my members said, hey, ask him about Lil Diesel from the MILF. I said, okay, I have no idea who that is. I brought it out. He's like, oh, this messy motherfucker asked me this question. Yeah. So this was like his arch enemy. The last time they saw each other, Terrence got stabbed. Mm-hmm. Right? 30 years ago. They both went to prison for individual murders for 30 years. They got, they're both out now. Diesel reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do an interview. So I called him Terrence. I said, yo, would you guys be willing to sit down together? He goes, absolutely. Went back to him. Do you want to sit down with Terrence on camera for the first time ever in 30 years? He said, absolutely. I said, okay. I brought in my actual NYPD security guy, active, still works for the force, frisked everyone down, and I explained to everyone before they saw each other, because I had them separated. I said, look, this is not Jerry Springer. I don't want any violence to occur. And if it does, you guys are going to get arrested. It'll be out of my hands. You see what I'm saying? I have an active NYPD guy. I can't stop him from arresting people. So they're like, cool. They sat down, had a very peaceful conversation, and showed a lot of growth in both of them. You know what I mean? But that was something that, once again, Terrence said, yeah, I'll do it. I'm down with it. So I said, cool, we'll go forward with it. I thought it was dope. But
that's a lot of things people don't know about the Blast. I just found that out just now. I didn't know you had active police behind scenes.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Because at the end of the day, you could be as crazy as you want to be, but you're not going to get arrested. You know what I'm saying? If you're willing to do something violent in front of police, then we're all fucked. Is how I look at it.
Let me ask you a question, Vlad, because I've seen this online too. What happened with you and King Tut, that interview?
Right, so King Tut, he got out, and he was the one that was rumored to have shot Tupac at Quad Studios. 50 even rapped about it. I heard, the Tut got knocked, many.
I ain't gonna spell it out for you motherfuckers all the time. You illiterate nigga. You can't read between it. That ball was coming out.
It was a hot ball. So everyone was under the impression that King Tut shot Tupac.
Right.
So King Tut gets out, and I was interested in potentially doing the interview, and his wife or his girlfriend reached out to me, and they're like, "Yo, we want to do the interview. We want 15,000, and his girl is going to do the interview herself." And she's like, "Oh, I have experience. I've interviewed lots of people." And I'm like, "Okay, well, first of all, the price is not doable, and you doing the interview is a deal breaker. You know, it doesn't matter how good you think you are doing interviews. It's Vlad TV. I'm the one that has to actually do it. And before we actually do the interview, me and him have to have an off-the-record conversation, and I have to have a clear understanding on what exactly he's going to talk about." Mm-hmm. So they were like, they started doing, "We don't need Vlad. All we have to do is just build our own platform. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard, blah, blah, blah." So I said, okay, at that point, I'm out of the picture.
Okay. All right.
Building a platform is not easy. But so they were doing their own interviews with each other. And then I come to find out a couple of weeks later that he didn't even shoot Tupac.
Well, I did that story in The Source in 2002 or 3.
And you said the same thing?
I did an interview with Tut for The Source in a section we had.
Right.
Where he cleared up, or at least gave his side to that, and said that he did not.
Right. But I guess because of the 50 Cent song, everyone kind of assumed.
Right. And I mean, that's why.
He could have been lying to you. Like, yeah,
yes, that's
you don't
part of
know,
the reason
right.
why, right? Like at the magazine at the time, obviously, if something is put out in the lyric by someone that big, we're going to go after that person if we have access and be able to get the interview. So that's what we did. And he talked about it on his platform. Yeah. His girlfriend, wife, I think she had a platform and she was building it, like you said, and they decided to put the interview on there. Yeah. I think that two things I want to say. One is obviously when you do an interview on your own platform, it's hard for people to be able to watch it and be like, really trust it because you're controlling your own narrative, right? Yeah. But when you have a relationship with someone, and when you were talking about making that decision, having the relationship with someone over, I'm going to choose this relationship over doing the interview with someone else, right? That's really a business decision, right? Because it's good business to make sure you maintain relationships. Relationships keep you going. Yeah. Right. Part of the issue that we used to have at The Source back in the day, right, was because Dave and Ray, they were in control of the business, right? Mm-hmm. The editorial side, and this is where the journalism conversation gets to get back open again. And we could talk about that interview because this was the interview about journalism versus podcasting. You guys have built these huge platforms with this big audience. You're really businessmen first, right? Even though a lot of people like to call themselves journalists. But at The Source, a business, and it was like church and state. Business was business and journalists were journalists. Yeah. So that when we did the interviews, those were those meetings where you hear so much about The Source and business being against the journalists because the journalists were fighting to make sure that everybody had a voice in the story. So that if you had a relationship and somebody came that was adversarial maybe, it was like, no, wait a minute. We also, as The Source, have to give that voice to the other side. Yeah. And so that's where I think there's a very, very big distinction between what people say is journalism now as podcasters and what it was when we were doing it. And that is a transition into the Cameron and Elliot Wilson conversation.
Well, I just want to say before you get off the topic, but
it's the same topic though.
Yeah, no, but in terms of, to answer your King Tut question, ultimately I felt like they were trying to hustle me. They were going to do an interview that I had no control over, and they're going to say, yeah, I never shot Tupac. And I would have spent $15,000 on that. And it would have absolutely lost money. Right. See what I'm saying? So I felt they were trying to hustle me. And I think I was smart enough to dodge that hustle. Right. So that answers your question. Gotcha, yeah. I'm glad I didn't do the interview or pay for it.
But in a business now, because people have talked about you paying for certain interviews, right? Don't you feel like everyone is trying to hustle you now? Because people know if you're going to cut a check, right?
Well, here's the thing. I think I was the first person, and this happened during the pandemic, I was the first person to really step out and say, I'm going to start paying for interviews.
Well, television always pays for interviews. That's a talent line, right? So like a lot of times, yes. So when you're doing stuff on TV, right, you have a budget for talent. So,
But is that actually paid, or is it they just cover travel?
No, they pay.
No, they pay. Or
They pay. And they've been paying for interviews. Some people weren't hip to it because when they had an aggressive PR team, the PR team is just trying to place them on TV, so they don't care.
Yeah.
But when the TV production goes after talent to book them on a show, a lot of times the talent is going to tax you, depending on what it is. If it's like a news show, then that's different because technically you're not really supposed to pay for interviews, right? Like when you do a documentary, you're not supposed to pay for an interview, but there's ways around that.
Because it's like incentive for you to say something that sensationalized. You know, if you're paying me this money, I gotta say something crazy.
But like everybody kind of knows the workaround in production. Like, you know, people getting paid for interviews. I think maybe in this space, you were probably the first one to publicly acknowledge that you were gonna cut a check if someone came and did it.
Right. So does everyone try to tax me? I mean, people have tried, but we don't pay for every interview.
Right.
70% of the interviews we don't pay for. You know, but what I realized that our business really revolves around regular guests, repeat guests. So with those repeat guests, yes, I could get them every so often based on our friendship or our relationship or the promo they'll get from the clip. But if I want them as often as I would like them, it made more sense to compensate them because I was making money as well. Right. As long as the money that I was paying them, I was able to clear on my end. And after doing interviews with people so many times, you could really eyeball it and say, okay, this person could bring about 3 million views. This person could bring about 1 million views. So I'm going to do the math in my head and offer them something that makes sense. And 95% of the time, we've made money from paid interviews.
Right.
So it just was a good business decision, ultimately.
But it is like a TV show. It's like the same sort of thing because you call it Vlad TV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, TV's in the name.
Right.
Yeah, so I've never been shy about that. And, you know, it turned into an actual business where more and more people realize, you know, I remember when me and Birdman talked for the first time. He was like, hey, man, I really respect your business sense of actually paying for interviews and turning into a real business because, you know, when he was coming up, no one ever got paid for interviews. Right. And, you know, hearing Birdman, who you could say was the greatest hip hop CEO ever in terms of pure music. Right. I mean, it was flattering. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. So yeah, I mean, we paid for a lot of interviews. A lot of interviews we don't pay for.
I think that the issue for me was when people started throwing numbers out there. I don't know how accurate they were about what you were paying.
What I was paying?
Yeah. It started to trickle back around. Yeah. Now I have this platform where a lot of guests have shown up off the love. Like if we fuck with you or we fuck with the show or we got a relationship with somebody in this room or whatever. And then certain people would be like, well, what y'all paying? Right. You know what I mean? And I'll be like, you know, I don't really want to.
Well, but you have to look at it on an individual basis.
Right.
Like, you know, if you take a 21 Savage, for example, which is a huge draw, and he rarely does interviews.
Yeah, and shout out to him because.
Yeah, I know he came and did it for free.
Right.
But if he said, give me $5,000, would you say no? I wouldn't say no.
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
Because
you wouldn't
I mean,
yes?
at 21 is someone that it's almost a guarantee. Right. But some people, are not a guarantee.
Exactly. And
I actually tried to work out a situation with somebody, and I thought it would be one thing, and it wasn't that. So I'm like, I'm not sure how to navigate this space. I've always asked you, like, how do you calculate what a person's interview is worth? I mean, there's some people it's like, oh, I know this is gonna go, but some people it's a gray area.
Well, you have to. I mean, there's no exact science for it, but you can look at what that person has done on similar platforms. So me and Adam have a somewhat similar platform, right? Not exactly, but it's somewhat similar. So if you go on No Jumper and you get 1 million views, right, which let's just say is maybe about $5,000, just to, you know, as a rough number, and they ask for $30,000, but they only got $1 million on a similar platform, then the answer is no. Because you've shown that, you know, you're not going to do that. This was, you know, when you looked at the whole situation with me and Marlon Wayans that went through when he wanted 40,000 plus 30%, my whole thing was, when you look at all your similar interviews, you know, of course, on the Shannon Sharp, it blew up and whatever else. But then when he did Breakfast Club afterwards, it got about 300,000 views.
Right.
And, you know, and Shannon even said publicly, I don't pay for interviews. So my point was, you're asking for 40,000, but you've never gotten it from anybody.
Right.
No one's ever paid you 40,000 to do an interview. You asked me for it, and I kind of jumped out the window and acted like an asshole about it. But my point is still valid that nobody has ever paid you that amount because you don't bring the audience to justify that amount. Right. Now, let me see, like who is someone that just goes crazy with the views? Let's say Jay-Z. If Jay-Z wanted 40,000 and is willing to sit down for you for 3 hours, there you go. If Jay-Z. Eminem wanted 40,000, we could do a 3-hour interview, ask me whatever you want.
But those are the guys that don't need it.
They don't need it.
So here's usually when they're sitting down, it's because they
actually want to do it. Right. And that's the thing.
Like,
a lot of times when you get, it's like, oh, so-and-so wants to do it. He wants an offer. And it's like, what do I offer someone who's worth $30 million? I mean, whatever it is, it's chump change to them.
Right.
But sometimes people are like, okay, well, just give me that money. I'm going to give it to my crew. You know what I mean? Just as just out of principle.
Right.
It's a business, man. It's a business. And we have, like the one thing about Vlad TV is because I have a computer science degree and I work closely with my programmer, we've built a very intricate system on the back end over the last, 17 years that I probably spent $1 million on, that every interview, there's a breakdown of all the costs involved, not just the appearance fee, but, the studio, the camera person, flights, hotels, security, whatever else. That's all calculated. And then the views are calculated. And then all the profit is calculated. This is what comes from YouTube. This is from Snapchat. This is from Facebook and so forth. And then there's a final number at the end that shows the profit and the loss. And I can sort, so I can look at Boosie and see every interview I've ever done with him and whether those interviews actually made money or not.
Right.
So as we negotiate, I could reference the data. So it's kind of turned into more of a...
But you're referencing data off of how many interviews?
It depends. Sometimes it's one interview. Sometimes it's 20 interviews. Sometimes it's other people's interviews and I have to just eyeball it.
But to me, that's just, what I find funny is that's just production, right? That's what we do in TV, right? We have an estimated production budget and then we have an actual production budget. We fill in the numbers. Okay, this is what we think we're going to spend and this is what we spend. And then you budget it out and see what your profit is.
Exactly.
Right? I think people weren't privy to that information before.
Right. Exactly.
People didn't know that because business was being done in a way that was respectful and discreet.
Yes.
Then you got to a place where people started talking about it.
Right.
And that kind of messed up the business.
Yeah. Because I don't think it messed it up.
I think it did.
I say it did mess it up because
I've
heard prices and I know what's exaggerated.
Right, but
I know what's like, ain't no way, bro.
In every negotiation,
like, stop.
In every negotiation, you start with a obscenely high number, and then the person will counter with an obscenely low number, and you try to sort of whittle your way down to the middle. Like, there's probably 3 or 4 people I'm talking to now where we're still trying to negotiate the price. Their price is a little high, my price is a little low. We try to get to the middle of it. I remember, me and Lil Woody, I offered him something. He said no. He's like, this is my price. This is what I want. Give me a 50% deposit. I will be there. I will do my job. I grumbled about it. I'm like, I don't know. But I'm like, fuck it. I gave it to him. He showed up on time, professional, stayed as long as I wanted, answered every question. The interview came out. It was massively profitable.
Do you get those guests where they come on for free? They pull up to the to your spot for free and then you pay them later?
No. There's an agreement, and like, for example, like me and Lil B kind of had a falling out years ago because, I remember early on, I asked if I could post his videos on my YouTube channel. He said, yeah, go ahead. Some of those videos really blew up. I think Wonton Soup became his biggest whatever. Then he was like, hey man, how come you're not giving me, a cut? And I'm like, well, that's not the agreement. If you want me to take it down, I'll take it down. Because take it all down. I'm like, cool, I took it all down. And then me and him kind of weren't really cool after that, because he felt like I should have broken him off, and I felt like there was no agreement for that.
Right. You actually helped him though.
Well, that's how I felt. Like his videos haven't reacted in the same way since then. me and him are cool again. You know, we talked recently, but I think that's sometimes the problem is that you come up to an agreement, or you just do it without any money changing hands, and then when you see all this money being made on the other side, people feel some type of way, especially if their financial situation isn't great. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not even like, look, like sometimes it's just a barter. Like, you know, like you do my show, I'll do your show. We've been doing that.
Exactly.
Me and Academics do the same thing. Me and Adam do the same thing. It's like all of us have money, so it doesn't make sense for us to pay each other. Because it's like if I pay you, then if you want me to do your show, you'll have to pay me too.
Y'all can just go to Bergdorf and
it's just silly.
You know?
We might what's that?
Y'all can just go to Bergdorf and hang out.
Yeah, we can just do that.
So no, but like when I was saying that it messed up the business, right? I mean, in terms of people expecting money for interviews, it's kind of gotten out of control.
It's got out of control, but it's ultimately up to the person to tell them no.
No.
Right.
Simple.
You know, you know how many people, oh my God, like I've had so many people that are suing Diddy that want to do an interview with me for $8,500 and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
Like, you know, this lawsuit is probably fake to begin with. You probably never even met him. You know, and I'm not going to pay for whatever. You know, like I said,
it's a hustle. There's a lot of people.
I mean, the King Tut situation, I felt like they were trying to hustle me.
Right.
They knew the whole time that they weren't going to say that they shot Tupac.
That he didn't.
And he didn't.
That he didn't.
Right.
He knew the whole time that was the real story. But he was like, okay, but I can get $15,000 out of saying that. You know, from Vlad, because Vlad probably is paying the most because he has the biggest platform. You know,
because
on YouTube.
I think it goes back to the journalism thing, right? Storytelling and journalism are two different things. And I think that's where we're caught up in right now. Podcasting is thriving off of storytelling.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not necessarily journalism.
Yeah, I don't consider myself a pure journalist.
Right.
I don't put myself in the same boat as someone like you.
Right.
You know?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand that there's more
but I like to tell stories too.
Yeah. There's more of an entertainment aspect of what I do.
Storytelling.
Now, I try to get the real story.
Right.
You know, 99% of the time, I felt that when I have people that I've interviewed, they have actually told the truth. Every so often, you get a mentally disturbed person that goes in and says some wild shit. You know, but in general, I feel like it's the truth. But I understand that we don't follow the strict journalistic guidelines in terms of what we do, and paying is one of those.
Right.
Like we were talking, you know, before we started, Vice reached out to me because they're doing this BMF series, and they were like, "Yo, we want to fly Vlad out to do like a 3-hour interview." So I'm like, I'm talking to my sister. I'm like, "How much are they going to pay me?" This is a journalistic piece, so we really just can't pay you. And I'm like, well, why the fuck would I go and spend my whole day flying out, sitting down, getting interviewed?
Unless you were doing a BMF series on your channel, which is where they kind of like, you know, don't understand. There's no value in a lot of people doing the talking head stuff, right? Like, it's no value.
Yeah.
People call me for stuff all the time. I'm not doing it without money unless I'm...
Exactly.
I just signed my book deal 2 days ago.
Woo!
Thank you. I'll announce it soon. I can't say what it is, but if I'm not gonna say what it is yet. If I'm promoting it, then I'll do all these interviews,
Right?
I mean,
and that's the thing also. It's like, if you're on a promo tour, I'm not gonna pay you.
Right.
And that's another thing. Sometimes it's like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll pay you now. I just catch you when you're doing
when the album drops.
Because it's not exclusive.
When you're doing a press run, you're going to stop here anyway.
Right.
So it's like, it's not good business for certain people.
Yeah. I mean,
some people, they may be worth it, but some people is not. And I feel like sometimes when you pay people, it's like an incentive for them to embellish.
I haven't found that, honestly. I haven't found that. If you pay someone, they're going to say the same story, whether you pay them or not pay them, is the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now I'm sure there's subtleties along the way, but I haven't really found that, to be honest.
Well, sometimes you're the gateway. Sometimes someone being on your platform and how well it does dictates whether another platform will
exactly.
pay them.
There's a lot of platforms that, you know, and we do the same thing. We look at other platforms. You know, I have a weekly review that my assistant sends over to show all the people that are on competitive platforms. They're like, okay, well, if they're doing that, it's more likely that they'll do our show as well. So we reach out to those people that we're interested in. Right. And people are doing that to us as well. So once you show up on Vlad TV, you know, people have built careers off their first Vlad TV. Right. Like Terrence Gangster Williams, who was coming out of prison doing 30 years, admitting to 40 murders, he has to have a job,
Right.
you know, because of his probation. So at the time, when we did his first interview, and I paid him for the interview, I mean, it wasn't a huge amount, it was a fair amount. You know, he was working at Tyson Chicken, hosing down chicken blood.
Wow.
You know, and gizzards and whatever else.
Wow.
You know, it was okay. You know, he was cool with that. But then after my interview and he saw the excitement that, you know, all the attention that he got from it, he started filming his own, you know, YouTube channel
Right.
in one of the rooms in his apartment.
Right.
And a year later, he was making 6 digits and he told his probation officer, I'm quitting my job. And the probation officer was like, great, let me look at these are the checks from YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, quit your job.
Do your thing.
So now he wakes up every morning, you know, he doesn't, you know, he lives like in Texas somewhere, goes into his other room, records, edits it himself, and makes a 6-digit salary without having to do really nasty, bloody work.
Right.
You know?
Let me ask you a question. Like you said that if you look at a platform and they interview someone and the numbers didn't do too well,
Yeah.
you don't look at it as from your point of view to be like, well, they not go ask the type of questions that I'm gonna ask to pull out of them. So pause.
Nah, you're right, you got it.
Right, but I'm gonna do a better job interviewing them, and my numbers gonna be higher than what theirs were anyway.
That is true to a certain degree, but those numbers probably won't be 10x,
Got it.
right? And there's also a certain value that comes with your first interview ever. A second interview doesn't always react like the first.
First one.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying? It could even be bigger,
Right.
but getting the story the first time and really doing a great job of getting that person to tell their story, because ultimately you are the navigator of that interview. You are the one that's helping to put that story together. You're not just letting a person sit there and just ramble for 2 hours.
Yeah. You gotta
There's
be
no value in
You
that.
gotta be able to pull the story
You
out.
got to be able, like we're like scientific about it.
Right.
Like, you know, my notes are laid out. Like I know exactly how the interview goes. And, you know, like one of the complaints people say is, oh, you always interrupt people. I don't do it just to do it. A lot of times when they start to veer off course and start going off into tangents, I got to
Bring them back.
potentially bring them back to get back into the story, back into the timeline. So yeah, a lot of work is on me. It's a lot of pressure. Like on interview days, you really can't even reach me because I'm in research mode up until the interview.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. You could potentially do a better job, but it won't be a massive difference. So like I said, if you do 1 million views on No Jumper and you want $50,000 to do Vlad TV, it probably won't
Won't happen.
Probably won't happen.
Yeah.
It probably won't happen. And
Well,
this is
how
why
many
you
views does something have to get to be worth $50,000?
Yeah. Yo. I just want to get right to it. Look. No introductions, no interruptions. When I roll into functions, just know that it's tucked in. Like I wore a tux in. Say hello to Justin. Justin for making something out of nothing. Mama told me I'm a star. Them haters said I wasn't. Now I'm looking at a mugging from a V-dozen shrugging. Feeling like McLovin. I'm becoming a conundrum. These dum-dums forgot where I come from. There's nothing that we run from. BK, niggas know the status. Got like 2 spots in the top 3 rappers.